April 26th, 1478, Florence Cathedral, 10:17 in the morning. The most important families in Florence are gathered for Easter Mass. Merchants, bankers, politicians, all dressed in their finest silks and jewels. Among them, two brothers, Lorenzo de Medici, 29 years old, the unofficial ruler of Florence, and his younger brother Giuliano, 25, charming, popular, beloved. They don't know it yet, but they have less than 3 minutes to live. When the bell rings for the elevation of the host, the most sacred moment of the Catholic Mass, 2 men will draw daggers. 19 stab wounds will be inflicted. One brother will die on the marble floor, drowning in his own blood. The other will survive by inches, and in the next 48 hours, over 80 people will be executed in the streets of Florence in one of the most brutal public vengeances in Renaissance history. This is the story of the Pazzi Conspiracy, the Sunday that changed everything. A plot, orchestrated by one of Italy's most powerful families, blessed by the Pope himself, executed in the house of God. It failed, but the consequences would reshape Italian politics for generations. What you're about to hear is the minute-by-minute account of the most shocking assassination attempt of the Renaissance, a story of betrayal, blood, and a revenge so complete that an entire family was erased from history. This is the day Florence almost fell. 10:15 in the morning, 2 minutes before the attack. Lorenzo de Medici stands near the altar, watching the priest prepare for the holiest moment of the Mass. His brother Giuliano is beside him, whispering something that makes Lorenzo smile. They're relaxed, confident. Why wouldn't they be? Lorenzo has ruled Florence for 9 years. He's transformed the city into the jewel of Italy. Under his leadership, Florence has become the banking capital of Europe, the artistic center of the world, a republic so wealthy that kings borrow money from its merchants. The Medici Bank has branches in Rome, Venice, Milan, Lyon, Geneva, Bruges, London. The family is worth over 300,000 florins. That's roughly $100 million in today's money. But Lorenzo's real power isn't just wealth. It's control. He doesn't hold an official title. Florence is technically a republic, but Lorenzo controls the signoria, the city council. He controls the guilds. He controls the military. When Lorenzo speaks, Florence listens. And that's exactly why some people want him dead. Among the crowd in the cathedral, 4 men watch the Medici brothers with cold calculation. Francesco de Pazzi, 35 years old, head of the Pazzi banking family, one of the oldest and most prestigious in Florence, a man consumed by jealousy and rage. Bernardo Baroncelli, a Pazzi employee, a killer hired for this specific job, and 2 priests, Antonio Maffei and Stefano da Bagnone, men of God about to commit murder. They're waiting for the signal. The bell. Francesco de Pazzi's hand moves slowly toward the dagger hidden beneath his cloak. His heart is racing. His palms are sweating. He's about to change history. But he doesn't know that in less than 3 minutes, he'll be the one dangling from a rope. Before we continue with what happens next, a quick request. If you're enjoying this story and want more people to discover it, hit the like button. It helps the channel grow tremendously. And if you want more deep dives into Renaissance history, assassinations, and political intrigue like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. I make videos like this every week. All right, let's get back to that cathedral. To understand why this assassination attempt happened, we need to go back 6 months. October 1477. The hatred between the Medici and Pazzi families has been building for years, but it reaches a breaking point when Lorenzo makes a decision that humiliates the Pazzis publicly. The Pope, Sixtus IV, wants to buy the town of Imola in northern Italy. It's a strategic location, and Sixtus wants it for his nephew, Girolamo Riario. The Pope asks the Medici Bank to finance the purchase. Lorenzo refuses. Why? Because Lorenzo knows that if the Pope controls Imola, he'll have too much power in northern Italy. It threatens Florence's independence, so Lorenzo says no to the Pope. This is a catastrophic political mistake. You don't say no to the Pope in 1477. Furious, Sixtus turns to the Pazzi Bank instead. Francesco de Pazzi personally arranges the loan. 60,000 ducats. He becomes the Pope's new favorite banker. For Francesco, this should be a triumph. But Lorenzo retaliates immediately. He uses his political power to strip the Pazzis of their main sources of income. He blocks their access to certain trade routes. He pressures the Signoria to investigate their business dealings. Most humiliating of all, Lorenzo pressures the Pope to revoke the Pazzis' right to manage papal finances in Florence, a position they've held for decades. Francesco de Pazzi watches his family's reputation crumble, and he blames one man, Lorenzo de Medici. Francesco travels to Rome in early 1478 and meets with Pope Sixtus and his nephew, Girolamo Riario. They discuss the Medici problem. Sixtus is direct. The Medici have become too powerful. They must be removed. Francesco sees his opportunity. "I can do it," he says, "but I'll need your support." The Pope nods, and just like that, the conspiracy is born. The plan is simple but audacious. Assassinate both Lorenzo and Giuliano de Medici simultaneously. With both brothers dead, the Medici power structure collapses. The Pazzis take control of Florence. The Pope gets a city loyal to Rome. Francesco recruits his uncle, Jacopo de Pazzi, the elderly patriarch of the family. Jacopo is hesitant at first. Assassination is risky. But Francesco convinces him. "The Pope himself has blessed this," Francesco says. "God is on our side." They recruit Bernardo Baroncelli, a ruthless killer with gambling debts. They recruit Francesco Salviati, the Archbishop of Pisa, who hates Lorenzo for blocking his appointment. They even recruit 2 priests willing to commit murder in church. The target date is set, April 26, 1478, Easter Sunday. The location, Florence Cathedral. The method, stab them during Mass when they're unarmed and surrounded by their supporters who won't expect violence in a sacred place. It's brilliant in its blasphemy. But there's one problem they don't anticipate. Lorenzo de Medici is incredibly difficult to kill. 10:17 in the morning. The bell rings. The priest elevates the host. Every head in the cathedral bows in prayer. This is the moment. Francesco de Pazzi and Bernardo Baroncelli rush toward Giuliano de Medici. Baroncelli strikes first. His dagger plunges into Giuliano's back. Giuliano gasps, stumbles forward. Francesco is on him instantly, stabbing, again and again and again. Witnesses later count the wounds. 19 times. Francesco stabs with such frenzy that he actually wounds himself in the leg. Giuliano de Medici, 25 years old, collapses onto the marble floor. Blood pools around him. He's dead within seconds. Meanwhile, 10 feet away, the 2 priests assigned to kill Lorenzo make their move. Antonio Maffei lunges with his dagger aimed at Lorenzo's throat. But Lorenzo sees the flash of steel. His reflexes save his life. He jerks backward. The blade misses his neck, but slashes his shoulder. Lorenzo spins, drawing his own sword, a ceremonial blade he carries for show. Suddenly, it's a weapon. Francesco Nori, a Medici loyalist, throws himself between Lorenzo and the attackers. The second priest's dagger, meant for Lorenzo, plunges into Nori instead. Nori drops, mortally wounded. The cathedral erupts into chaos. People are screaming, running. No one knows what's happening. Is it an attack, a riot, a coup? Lorenzo's friends, Antonio Ridolfi, Sigismondo della Stufa, and others, form a protective circle around him. They drag him toward the sacristy, the vestry behind the altar. Lorenzo is bleeding, but he's alive. He looks back and sees his brother's body on the floor. The rage that fills him in that moment will define the next 3 years of Italian history. The assassins realize immediately that they've failed. Giuliano is dead, but Lorenzo escaped. And now they're trapped in a cathedral full of Medici supporters. Baroncelli runs. He slips through the crowd and flees into the streets. Francesco de Pazzi, bleeding from his self-inflicted leg wound, limps toward the exit. The two priests try to blend into the panicking crowd. Outside, Archbishop Salviati is supposed to be seizing the Palazzo della Signoria, Florence's city hall, with armed men. But the plan is falling apart. The guards at the palazzo overpower Salviati's mercenaries. Salviati himself is captured within minutes. In the sacristy, Lorenzo's friends barricade the door. Someone, suggests Lorenzo might have been poisoned. The dagger could have been coated. Without hesitation, Antonio Ridolfi puts his mouth on Lorenzo's wound and sucks out the blood. If there's poison, he'll die instead of Lorenzo. There's no poison. But the loyalty is absolute. Lorenzo survives. And now he wants revenge. Within an hour, the entire city knows what happened. Giuliano de Medici is dead. Lorenzo survived. The Pazzi family tried to kill them. The Pope was involved. Florence explodes. The people loved Giuliano. He was charming, generous, handsome. He had no political ambitions. He just wanted to enjoy life. And the Pazzis murdered him in church. On Easter Sunday, the rage is biblical. Mobs form in the streets. They're hunting for anyone connected to the Pazzi family. "Palle! Palle!" they scream. It's the Medici rallying cry, referring to the balls on the Medici coat of arms. Lorenzo emerges from the cathedral, his shoulder bandaged, and addresses the crowd. He doesn't need to say much. "Justice will be done," he says simply, and Florence understands exactly what that means. The hunt begins. Francesco de Pazzi is found hiding in his family's palazzo. He's dragged through the streets, naked, beaten bloody by the mob. They bring him to the Palazzo della Signoria. There's no trial. Lorenzo wants him dead. Now. Francesco is hanged from the window of the palazzo. Archbishop Salviati, a man of the church, is hanged next to him, still wearing his religious vestments. The two bodies swing in the wind, side by side. The message is clear. God will not protect those who betray Florence. Over the next 48 hours, the executions continue. Jacopo de Pazzi, the elderly patriarch, tries to flee the city on horseback. He's caught by peasants in the countryside, dragged back to Florence and hanged. But the mob isn't satisfied. They dig up his body and drag it through the streets. Then they throw it into the Arno River. Children fish it out and beat it with sticks before throwing it back in. The two priests who attacked Lorenzo are found hiding in a monastery. They're hanged. Bernardo Baroncelli, the killer who stabbed Giuliano, manages to escape Florence. He flees to Constantinople. But Lorenzo's reach is long. Within a year, Lorenzo's agents track Baroncelli down, convince the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II to hand him over, and bring him back to Florence in chains. He's hanged in December 1479. In total, over 80 people connected to the conspiracy are executed. Some are guilty. Some are just relatives of the Pazzis. It doesn't matter. Lorenzo wants the family erased, and he succeeds. The Pazzi name is banned in Florence. Their palazzos are confiscated. Their coat of arms is chiseled off buildings. Pazzi women are forbidden from marrying anyone with political connections. Within a generation, the Pazzi family ceases to exist as a political force. But Lorenzo's problems are just beginning, because now he has to deal with the Pope. This story gets even more intense from here. If you're still watching, this is your reminder to subscribe. I post deep dives like this every single week. Renaissance politics, assassinations, wars, conspiracies. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Also, drop a comment. Do you think Lorenzo went too far with his revenge, or was it justified? I want to hear your thoughts. Now let's talk about what happened when Lorenzo went to war with the Pope. June. 1478, 2 months after the assassination attempt. Pope Sixtus IV is furious. His conspiracy failed. His archbishop was hanged. His allies are dead. And Lorenzo de Medici is more powerful than ever. Sixtus does what popes do when they're angry. He excommunicates Lorenzo. This isn't just a religious punishment. Excommunication means Lorenzo is cut off from the sacraments. He can't take communion. He can't be buried in consecrated ground. In theory, any Christian who kills an excommunicated person faces no spiritual consequences. It's essentially a death warrant blessed by God. But Sixtus doesn't stop there. He places the entire city of Florence under interdict. No masses, no weddings, no baptisms, no Christian rites of any kind. Every church in Florence goes silent. The Pope is trying to turn the people against Lorenzo by denying them access to salvation. It doesn't work. The Florentines are too angry about Giuliano's murder. They rally behind Lorenzo even harder. But then Sixtus plays his final card. He forms a military alliance with King Ferdinand of Naples, and together they invade Florentine territory. By September 1478, a combined papal and Neapolitan army is marching toward Florence. Lorenzo organizes the defense. He hires mercenary companies. He fortifies the cities. He rallies citizen militias. But Florence is a banking city, not a military power. The war drags on for over a year. Florentine villages are burned. Trade routes are cut off. The economy suffers. By late 1479, Florence is exhausted. Lorenzo knows he can't win a war of attrition against the Pope and Naples, so he does something insane. He decides to go to Naples alone. December 1479. Lorenzo de Medici boards a ship in Pisa and sails to Naples. He's walking into the court of King Ferdinand, the same man who's been trying to destroy Florence for the past year. Ferdinand could execute him, imprison him, hold him for ransom. Lorenzo knows this. He goes anyway. His friends beg him not to. It's suicide. But Lorenzo understands something they don't. Ferdinand doesn't actually want to destroy Florence. He just wants the Pope to stop threatening his southern territories. If Lorenzo can convince Ferdinand that a peace with Florence is more valuable than a war, he might survive. Lorenzo arrives in Naples and is immediately placed under comfortable house arrest. For 3 months, he lives as a prisoner/guest in the Neapolitan court. He uses every skill he has: diplomacy, charm, bribery. He befriends Ferdinand's daughter-in-law, Ippolita Sforza, who admires Lorenzo's patronage of the arts. He throws lavish parties for Neapolitan nobles, spending Medici money freely to win their favor. He gives speeches praising Ferdinand's wisdom and power. Slowly, Ferdinand begins to see Lorenzo not as an enemy, but as a useful ally. In March 1480, Ferdinand makes his decision: peace. He signs a treaty with Florence, ending the war. Lorenzo is free to go home. When Lorenzo returns to Florence in March 1480, he's greeted as a hero. He walked into the lion's den alone and emerged victorious. No army, no mercenaries, just one man's political genius. The Pope is forced to accept the peace. He lifts the excommunication and the interdict. Florence is whole again, and Lorenzo de Medici is now the undisputed master of the city. So let's return to that moment in the cathedral. April 26th, 1478, 10:17 in the morning. Giuliano de Medici lies dead on the marble floor. 19 stab wounds, blood pooling around him. Lorenzo stumbles into the sacristy, wounded but alive. In that moment, everything changes. Lorenzo transforms from a patron of the arts into a political force so ruthless that his enemies are literally erased from history. The man who loved poetry and philosophy becomes a man who hangs priests and drags corpses through the streets. The Pazzi Conspiracy doesn't destroy Lorenzo. It makes him untouchable. For the next 12 years, until his death in 1492, Lorenzo rules Florence with absolute authority. No one challenges him. No one dares. Because everyone remembers what happened to the Pazzis. The immediate consequences of that Easter Sunday are clear. 80+ executions, a war with the Pope, a peace negotiated at knife point. But the long-term consequences are even more profound. Lorenzo's survival and his brutal response send a message across Italy. The Medici cannot be killed. For the next century, the Medicis will dominate not just Florence, but European politics. They'll produce popes, queens of France, grand dukes, and it all traces back to this moment. April 26, 1478. The day Florence almost fell. The day Lorenzo de Medici survived 19 stab wounds meant for him. The day a conspiracy blessed by the Pope failed in the house of God. Today, over 500 years later, you can still visit the Florence Cathedral where this happened. You can stand on the same marble floor where Giuliano died. The building is unchanged. The beauty is overwhelming. Brunelleschi's dome, Ghiberti's doors, Giotto's bell tower. But if you know the story, you can't help but imagine that Easter Sunday. The screaming, the blood, the chaos. Historians still debate the Pazzi Conspiracy. Was Lorenzo's revenge justified? Or did he go too far? Did the Pope really order the assassination, or was he just passively complicit? Could Florence have survived without Lorenzo, or did his ruthlessness save the Renaissance itself? Questions remain. But one thing is certain. On April 26, 1478, a single moment of violence in a cathedral changed the course of European history. One brother died, the other survived, and nothing was ever the same. This was the story of the Pazzi Conspiracy, the assassination attempt that failed, the revenge that succeeded, and the man who walked into enemy territory alone and came out victorious. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Leave a comment and tell me, would you have done what Lorenzo did? Traveled to Naples alone to negotiate peace? Or would you have kept fighting? Next week, I'm covering another Renaissance assassination, this one involving a pope, a poison ring, and a family even more ruthless than the Medicis. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, history doesn't repeat itself, but it echoes, and some echoes last forever.